Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. I am passionate about helping executives drive change. And I've learned through the years that for any change to be successful, there is also likely a cultural change that is required. This is particularly important for leaders who are adamant about preparing their organizations to compete in the future. Also, as we emerge from COVID-19, and return to our offices, regardless of what they might look like, everything we discuss today becomes even more relevant. The skills required to advance cultural change are the same skills required to help employees through all of the change that we have and will go through as a result of this pandemic. In part, that this means that we've all had an opportunity to become more human. And what have we gained? For those who have taken this as an opportunity to grow their leadership, we saw significant improvement. Let's be sure we are grounded on the definition of the digital age, at least from an organizational perspective. To be successful in the digital age, organizations must learn to move faster, innovate faster, provide more employee development opportunities, drive for greater integrity, and collaborate faster. Yet most organizations are ill prepared. And in fact, we've seen many fail because they haven't been able to figure out how to deal with these changes. It's all about staying relevant in a world where there's greater speed and more innovation. One of the first projects that I managed at Whirlpool more than 30 years ago was the introduction of that newfangled technology, electronic mail and calendaring. We had no real sponsor. Our first implementation was suboptimal. But then we had an idea. I went to Mindy, our CEO's executive assistant, and asked her to help with the implementation. I knew Mindy, and because of her role, I knew that she had significant influence in the organization. I've always said, if you want to accomplish anything, figure out who the highest ranking person is in the organization and talk with their administrative assistant. I asked Mindy to help by requesting that all her peers use only the new electronic calendaring capability to schedule meetings among the executive team. At first, there was resistance, too many issues. So Mindy and I started meeting with them regularly to help them adjust. We added conference rooms to the system. We provided more user support. Within a few weeks, everyone was on board, and within a few months, we had more than 2,000 people using the system. Now, this is a very simple example, yet we changed the culture. We provided a way for these executive assistants to work together more effectively. We gave them the development opportunities along the way and provided a forum for them to collaborate. They rose to the occasion. As project managers, think about these implications as opportunities. We can provide our teams with opportunities to make big contributions in simple ways. The first step in the journey is understanding that what brought us to where we are today does not serve us well as we progress into the future. In my experience, organizations who suffer from cross-functional dysfunction, and that's most of them, struggle the most with this. We need to understand this and where it originated from to help us begin to change the culture. Historically, organizations are hierarchical. And while you need structure to have the right level of control, it's critical for leaders to develop greater collaboration across their organization. This is the underlying principle of driving a new culture. The benefits are real and they're quantifiable. As project managers, we live with this day in and day out. And I believe that this condition is the one that impacts our success more than any other. Let's dive into this idea of cross-functional dysfunction. A study published a few years ago in the Harvard Business Review tells us that 75% of teams are cross-functionally dysfunctional. This means they struggle to stay on plan and results come much more slowly, if at all. I had a client a few years ago that wanted to change the way it interacted with its customers. This large company had three major product divisions which often shared the same customers. Yet each of these divisions approached their customers differently, causing confusion. One goal of the project was for all three divisions to change their interaction with the customer base so that it was more consistent. The project manager, we'll call him Albert, was selected from the largest of the three divisions and set about to make the change. He ran into many obstacles trying to engage the three divisions to work together. First, they couldn't agree on team composition. Then they couldn't agree on an approach. Then they couldn't agree on how to communicate with the rest of the company. This went on and on for 3 years and long after I left. In the end, they were not able to resolve the conflicts between the three divisions. The project failed and was canceled. In Albert's case, he attempted to resolve these issues with better project management. He improved risk and issue reporting. He put more focus on metrics. He added more tools. But in the end, it didn't work. He would have been better served had he had stronger sponsorship to drive accountability across the three divisions and focus on aligning the players. This is a classic example of cross-functional dysfunction that ultimately cost this company millions of dollars. I also believe that the more we work from home, the greater that cross-functional dysfunction is exacerbated. It's more difficult to align when you work apart from one another. So how did we come to this place where cross-functional dysfunction is so prevalent? It goes back nearly 2 centuries. During the mid-19th century, producers focused on craftsmanship. Let's use the wagon wheel as an example. One man built one wagon wheel. If you needed to produce more wagon wheels, you hired more men who each built one. The process was slow and produced highly variable results. No two wagon wheels were the same. By 1890, management scientist Frederick Taylor came along with the idea of greater specialization of tasks to improve efficiency. Now you had men focused on different aspects of building wagon wheels. One man built the spokes and the wooden part of the wheel. Another built the hub. Still another fashioned the metal components. Then one more man assembled everything. This sped the process and offered more consistency. By the early 20th century, people like Henry Ford capitalized on this idea and created the assembly line. And soon this specialization moved back into the back office where, for example, payroll would compute paychecks, but accounts payable would write the checks. Ultimately, though, this started to become a blocker. Toward the end of the century, more and more organizations grappled with becoming more innovative. Clayton Christensen and people like him appeared on the scene and started talking about how organizations had to become more innovative and how to set about doing it. It was soon recognized that faster innovation and more innovation was required to succeed. I saw all this play out in real life. In the late 1990s, I was involved in 2 projects at Whirlpool Corporation that would ultimately save the company $160 million a year in supply chain costs. We did these projects by focusing on efficiency. We drove greater structure and discipline. We drove more consistency. Yet at the same time, the company struggled with innovation. I remember our leaders talking about things we needed to do to become more competitive in a marketplace where innovation had more and more attention. There was this sort of internal tension between delivering the best products we could at the most affordable prices and trying to be recognized for the innovation that we were bringing to the marketplace. What's the moral of the story? Organizations need to balance efficiency with effectiveness. And as project managers, this falls on us as well. We have budgets and deadlines to meet. So we need our team to deliver results every day. Yet we also need them to be creative in developing and implementing solutions. Doing the same thing faster is good. Doing something that delivers a greater customer experience in the same amount of time or less time is better. How do we know we have a problem? Project failure rates continue to run between 20 and 30%. These rates are essentially unchanged for over a decade. This costs projects about $2 trillion a year. That's a lot of money. In the 1990s, we began talking more about empowerment, and you still hear this term bandied about. Rewards are misaligned. I've seen it happen where great functional teams were rewarded more than outstanding cross-functional teams that actually delivered greater results. And of course, we've all seen plenty of failures of ERP and knowledge management solutions because the organization never addressed the underlying cross-functional issues. In the 1990s, we had a very well-meaning CEO who was adamant about employees becoming more empowered. He called it a fire in their belly. Some of us wondered what he meant. Fire in the belly suggested indigestion, and we knew we didn't want that. But seriously, we had some idea of what empowerment meant, but there was not agreement at the top of what it was or what the outcomes were to be. We had a sense he wanted us to work together more effectively. But apparently, middle management was out the day he talked about this because we certainly didn't receive any support from them on what to do or how to do it. Empowerment was a buzzword. Empowerment failed. As project managers, we face these issues every day. But what do we do when something isn't working right? This is where our strength as an influencer comes to play. And if the issue is bigger or broader than our influence, hopefully we have a sponsor that we can turn to for help. We've talked a great deal about the pitfalls of cross-functional dysfunction and how it hurts us. Let's change up the discussion. First, let's talk about root causes, and then how we can change the trajectory. Cross-functional dysfunction at its core is caused by misaligned goals at the top of the organization. This drives confusion in roles, which in turn prevents people from moving ahead. Further, leaders resist giving up power. All this drives people to fear working across the organization. Finally, attempts to drive this from the top are too slow and ineffective because we never taught people how to work together across the organization more effectively. We've all had that one project that causes us great stress. I was asked to help a leadership team reposition a portfolio of projects and implement a more structured PMO to drive towards success. My team did exactly what we were asked to do, but it wasn't enough. I saw early on that there was not enough alignment at the senior levels of the company to drive this portfolio successfully. We attempted to fix this by building alignment discussions into the project plan. These were poorly attended. This, in turn, drove more confusion for the project team. We asked for a seasoned leader to drive the PMO. They responded with a person who was ill-equipped for such a role. In the end, there was a great deal of top-down pressure to perform, but there was no one executive sponsor who was driving towards success. Ultimately, they had some success, but it took much longer than expected and delivered far less capability than planned. In this example, we needed to have a realistic handle on the major risks. This project had 5 of the 6 causes listed. People were fleeing the organization because of this gaping lack of leadership. It's also important today to have a good handle on your organizational risks with everyone spread apart, working from home. 4 of the 6 symptoms are likely to be greater risks to our organizations during the season of COVID-19. But it doesn't have to be this way. With strong leadership and a willingness to do the hard work together, we can overcome this dysfunction. It boils down to having purpose with aligned outcomes, being willing to truly empower your team, giving up control, and expecting greater openness. This is the essence of the active leadership model. Let's use a case study to dig into this more. AbbVie is a $25 billion pharmaceutical company. They are the maker of Humira. I'm sure you've seen the television commercials. For a couple of years, I worked with a senior leadership team there to build a new culture. They had just completed restructuring a large team of about 400 people. Employee satisfaction was low and unfavorable attrition was extremely high. Our mission was to turn this around. I worked with the senior vice president of this team. His name was Michael. We did everything listed on this page. We devised a purpose statement with clear outcomes that was measurable. Michael and I worked with his leadership team to ensure they were all aligned on what it meant to their respective functions. We built a change action network of employees to work across the organization and gave them the tools they needed to affect the change. We held multiple workshops to drive greater organizational trust, which in turn helped people understand that they had the right and the responsibility to challenge one another. At the senior team level and within the Change Action Network, we encouraged leaders and employees alike to work together across the organization. I saw Michael become more of a coach. Early in our relationship, he spent a great deal of energy moderating unhealthy conflict. But as the team improved, he became more of a coach. He did this masterfully. I watched him become a different leader, allowing his team to drive the change with minimal input from him during staff meetings. His role became the guy who kept everyone focused. The organization increased their effectiveness, they increased their speed, and they created more innovative ways to work with their customers. And in the end, this really isn't that difficult. It's common sense combined with the confidence to try a new approach. It's painting the picture so people can understand where we are trying to go. It's facilitating growth and not demanding it. It's modeling behavior where we are vulnerable and we begin to trust and engage in healthy conflict. Successful leaders and project managers do this every day. Let's connect the dots. When you reduce the negative impact of cross-functional dysfunction, you change the culture. Your team will be more productive. They'll be prone to try new ideas. They'll embrace development opportunities. All this leads to the bottom line. improving the customer experience. AbbVie did it. In 1 year, engagement scores moved from 35% to 70%. In 2 years, unfavorable attrition plummeted from 16% to 2%. This in an industry where uh, the average rate is around 7%. As a result of all of this success, Michael's team won a 25% increase in budget and headcount from the executive leadership team so they could ultimately do more to support AbbVie's customers, physicians, and patients like you and me. As individuals involved in project management, we have a huge influence on cross-functional collaboration and on the cross-functional health of our organization. As we wrap up our time together today, here's a summary of things we can do as project managers to drive success and how we can help our leaders drive a new organizational culture that promotes greater success in the digital age. As we wrap up our time together today, I would like to share a few resources. There are books, articles, and studies in the appendix that will further your knowledge on the topics we've discussed today. There are also some tools to help with delegation and decision support. The delegation tool is a simple process outlining the steps. You might find it useful to reinforce your delegation techniques. I've used the decision support tools for years to help me with problem identification and analysis, decision making, and problem prevention. I hope you find them helpful. Again, thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. Best of luck with your projects, and if you have any questions, please feel free to follow up with me through any of the methods listed or through the PMI site. Have a great day.